My husband told me he cheated because watching me give birth to our daughter ruined his attraction to me. He said this like he was doing me a favor by being honest. I saw things come out of you that I can't unsee. You're just not sexual to me anymore. You're like a medical patient now. He had started sleeping with his coworker Megan 3 weeks after I gave birth. While I was bleeding, leaking milk, and trying to keep our newborn alive on no sleep, he was at her apartment telling her how disgusted he was by what my body had become. It's not personal, he said when I found out. Male biology isn't designed to witness birth. It triggers a protective response that kills sexual attraction. I researched it. There was no research. He made that up to sound scientific about being a terrible person. Blake didn't even try to hide the affair after I found out. He'd text Megan in front of me. Leave for her place while I was nursing. Come home talking about how refreshing it was to be with someone whose body was still tight and clean. You should be grateful I'm being transparent instead of sneaking around, he'd say. Most men would just leave. I'm trying to make this work despite my biological repulsion. He moved me into the guest room because he couldn't sleep next to someone who reminded him of medical procedures. He'd describe in detail what he saw during delivery and how it haunted him. The stretching, the fluids, the smell. I'm scarred, honestly. But he expected me to cook his meals, wash his clothes, and handle all the baby care because those were my duties as a mother. He started bringing Megan around our friends, introducing her as his emotional support during this difficult time. Blake's been through trauma, she'd say, rubbing his shoulder. Watching birth can give men PTSD. He needs understanding, not judgment. Our friends didn't know what to say. Blake had turned himself into the victim. He'd tell anyone who'd listen about his suffering, how he'd supported me through pregnancy, only to be visually assaulted by the delivery. He was trying to rebuild his ability to feel attraction, but my postpartum body was making it impossible. She doesn't even try to look nice anymore, he'd complain. I was 3 months postpartum, running on 2 hours of sleep, covered in spit up, and he wondered why I wasn't wearing lingerie. He gave me a gym membership for Mother's Day, a pack of diet pills for our anniversary, a book about winning your husband back after a baby for my birthday. Each gift came with a speech about how he was investing in our future by helping me become attractive again. I'm fighting for us, he'd say. You need to fight too. The breaking point wasn't the cheating or the cruel comments. It was when I overheard him on a work call. Blake was a medical equipment salesman who regularly sat in on surgeries to demonstrate products. He was laughing with colleagues about watching a cardiac procedure that morning. You should have seen the blood. The chest cracked open like a lobster. He wasn't traumatized by medical procedures. He was only disgusted by mine. That's when I started planning. I knew Blake's company was about to launch a new surgical device, and he was in line for the lead presenter position. It would mean a huge promotion and bonus. He'd been preparing for months. The presentation was in front of 200 potential buyers, plus all the company executives. Blake had to demonstrate the device during an actual surgery that would be broadcast on screens to the audience. The surgery they'd chosen? A cesarean section. Blake tried to get out of it when he found out, but his boss said it was perfect for showing the device's precision with delicate procedures. If he refused, he'd lose the promotion to his competitor Ramon, who was eager to step in. Blake spent the week before the presentation practicing his speech about the beauty of bringing life into the world, the miracle of birth, and the precision required in obstetric surgery. I sat there listening to him rehearse lines about respecting the female body and the sacred process of delivery. The morning of the presentation, Blake was nervous but confident. He didn't know I'd called his boss's wife, Jenny, who'd also had a traumatic birth experience. I told her everything Blake had said about my delivery, about how disgusted he was, about cheating because of what he saw. Jenny was horrified. She'd been in the audience for previous presentations and knew they sometimes asked personal questions. She had an idea. During the Q&A after Blake's flawless demonstration, Jenny stood up. Mr. Blake, you spoke beautifully about respecting the birth process. Can you share any personal experience with childbirth that informs your perspective? Blake froze. 200 people were staring at him. His face goes white. Every single person in that auditorium turns to look at him, waiting for his answer about his personal experience with childbirth. I'm watching the live stream from home with our daughter on my lap, and I can see the exact moment he realizes he's trapped. His mouth opens, but nothing comes out. The surgical lights make the sweat on his forehead shine like he just ran a marathon. 200 potential buyers sit in silence. The executives lean forward in their chairs. Blake's hands grip the podium so hard his knuckles turn pale. He finally stammers something about respecting patient privacy. His voice cracks on the word privacy. Jenny doesn't let him off that easily. She stands up fully, straightening her jacket, and says her husband works for the company too. She's curious how Blake reconciles his beautiful speech about the miracle of birth with his actual feelings about the process. The way she says actual makes several people in the front row exchange glances. Blake's face somehow gets even whiter. He tries to laugh it off, but the sound comes out strangled. Blake's boss leans forward in the front row. His expression shifts from polite interest to intense focus. Ramon is sitting 3 seats away with a slight smile on his face. He crosses his arms and settles back in his chair like he's about to watch his favorite show. The 200 potential buyers are completely silent. Nobody coughs. Nobody shifts in their seats. The only sound in that massive auditorium is the hum of the video equipment. Blake looks at his boss, then at Ramon, then back at Jenny. He's searching for an exit that doesn't exist. Blake tries to deflect by talking about professional boundaries. His voice is shaking now. Sweat is visible on his forehead even through the live stream. The camera operator zooms in slightly, probably thinking this is interesting drama. Jenny asks if he has children. Blake has to admit yes, a 4-month-old daughter. The words come out quiet. Several audience members lean forward to hear better. Jenny nods slowly, like she's a lawyer who just got the answer she wanted. She asks how old the baby is again, making him repeat it. 4 months. The number hangs in the air. She asks if he was present for the birth. Blake nods. He doesn't trust his voice anymore. Jenny delivers the killing blow by asking how that experience shaped his respect for the female body and the birth process. She says he spoke so movingly about it in his presentation. She wants to know what personal insights informed those beautiful words. Blake's mouth opens and closes. Opens and closes. He looks exactly like a fish drowning in air. The silence stretches so long it becomes painful to watch. Someone in the back row coughs. Blake flinches at the sound. He can't say what he really thinks without destroying himself. But he also can't fake enthusiasm convincingly after being put on the spot like this. His brain is clearly scrambling for anything to say. He finally mumbles something generic about it being educational. The word educational lands like a dead fish on the floor. It's the worst possible answer. Too clinical, too distant, too obviously fake after his passionate presentation speech. He tries to move to the next question, gesturing at someone in the back row. But the damage is already spreading through that audience like blood and water. His boss's expression has shifted from interested to concerned. The man's eyebrows pull together. He glances at his wife Jenny, then back at Blake. Several audience members are whispering to each other behind their hands. A woman in the 3rd row leans over to her colleague and says something that makes him shake his head. Ramon is openly smirking now. He's not even trying to hide it. Blake's carefully constructed professional image just developed visible cracks. The presentation was flawless. The demonstration was perfect. But this moment, this single moment of truth, is unraveling everything. I can see it happening in real time through the screen. Blake sees it too. His eyes are wide with panic. The presentation ends awkwardly. Blake rushes through the last few slides without his earlier confidence. His voice stays shaky. He forgets to thank the surgical team. He stumbles over the company name. When he finishes, the applause is polite but scattered. Nothing like the enthusiastic response Ramon got at the last presentation. Blake practically runs off stage. The camera follows him for a moment before cutting to the company logo. I watch the live stream end and sit there with our daughter sleeping against my chest. My heart is pounding, but my hands are steady. Jenny catches my call 20 minutes later. She sounds satisfied in a grim way. Her voice has an edge of justice to it. She says his boss pulled him aside immediately after. The whispers in the audience were brutal. She overheard 2 potential buyers talking about how uncomfortable that exchange was. One of them said Blake seemed like he was hiding something. Another said the disconnect between his presentation words and his actual response was concerning. Jenny says Ramon swooped in during the networking session and smoothly answered questions Blake should have handled. He made Blake look even worse by comparison. The boss kept glancing at Blake with this disappointed expression. Jenny says she's never seen someone's professional reputation crack that fast. Blake comes home 3 hours later looking destroyed. His tie is loose around his neck. His jacket is wrinkled. His eyes are red like he's been rubbing them. He doesn't know I orchestrated anything, so he rants about some crazy woman who ambushed him with personal questions. He paces around the living room, gesturing wildly with his hands. I nod sympathetically while feeding our daughter, asking what he said in response. My voice is calm, concerned. Exactly what a supportive wife would sound like. Blake runs his hands through his hair and admits he froze up. He gave terrible answers. The boss told him the presentation content was perfect, but his Q&A performance raised concerns about his ability to handle pressure. Those were the exact words. Concerns about his ability to handle pressure. Blake repeats them twice, like he still can't believe it. Ramon apparently stepped in smoothly and answered follow-up questions. He was charming and confident, and everything Blake wasn't in that moment. Blake sinks onto the couch and puts his head in his hands. He says he doesn't understand why that woman targeted him. What did she want from him? Why did she push so hard about his personal experience? I make a sympathetic sound and suggest maybe she was just curious. Blake shakes his head. He says it felt personal. It felt like she knew something. I spend the next 2 days watching Blake fall apart. He checks his phone every 10 minutes, refreshing his email over and over. He calls colleagues and asks if they've heard anything about the promotion decision. His voice gets tighter each time someone says they don't know yet. He paces around the house with his laptop open, replaying the presentation video. I can hear him muttering to himself about that woman's questions. He keeps asking out loud why she targeted him specifically, what she wanted from him. I feed the baby and change diapers and pretend I don't know anything. Blake barely notices I'm in the room. He's too busy trying to figure out what went wrong. He watches the Q&A section 5 times on Wednesday alone. Each time he gets to Jenny's question, he pauses the video and stares at the screen. He's looking for clues, trying to understand why she pushed so hard about his personal experience. Thursday night, the doorbell rings around 7. Blake answers it and Megan walks in carrying takeout bags. She's never been to our house before. Blake always went to her apartment because he said it was easier that way. But tonight she's here, rubbing his shoulders and unpacking Chinese food on our kitchen counter. She tells him the presentation was perfect, and that woman was probably just some angry feminist looking to cause trouble. Blake nods and leans into her touch. I stay in the nursery with the baby, sitting in the rocking chair with the door cracked open. Their voices carry down the hall. Megan says Jenny probably has issues with men and wanted to make Blake look bad in front of his boss. Blake agrees and adds that some women can't handle seeing successful men in medical sales. They spend 20 minutes trashing Jenny, calling her bitter and jealous. I rock my daughter and listen to every word. Blake sounds more confident now that Megan's here supporting him. He says he's probably overthinking the whole thing. The promotion is basically his. Ramon doesn't have his technical knowledge or presentation skills. Megan kisses his cheek and tells him he's right. She leaves around 9 and Blake goes to bed looking more relaxed than he has in days. Friday afternoon comes. Blake is in the living room when his phone rings. I'm in the kitchen heating up a bottle, but I can see him through the doorway. He answers on the first ring. His voice is eager and professional. Then his face changes. The color drains out of it completely. His shoulders slump forward. He doesn't say much, just makes small sounds of acknowledgement. When he hangs up, he sits there staring at nothing for a full minute. I walk into the room with the baby. Blake looks up at me like he forgot I existed. He says he didn't get the promotion. Ramon got it instead. His voice is flat and hollow. I ask what happened, keeping my tone concerned and supportive. Blake repeats what his boss told him. The technical knowledge was excellent. The presentation content was perfect. But the company needs someone who can handle unexpected challenges with poise. His Q&A performance showed a concerning weakness under pressure. Those exact words keep coming out of Blake's mouth. Concerning weakness under pressure. He says Ramon stepped in during the networking session and answered follow-up questions smoothly. He was charming and confident and everything Blake wasn't in that moment. Blake made himself look bad by comparison. He stands up and starts pacing again. But this time it's different. He's not anxious anymore. He's angry. He says Jenny sabotaged him somehow. She must have. That question wasn't random. She knew exactly what to ask to make him freeze up. But he can't figure out how she knew or why she did it. He never connects it to me. Why would he? His wife's postpartum body problems have nothing to do with some executive's wife asking questions at a presentation. I let him rage for an hour. He calls Jenny names. He says she probably has it out for all men in the company. He wonders if she's trying to push some feminist agenda by making male presenters look bad. He texts Megan and she calls back immediately. I can hear her voice through the phone, high and sympathetic. She tells him this is discrimination and he should report Jenny to someone. Blake agrees and says he's going to figure out what her problem is. When he finally runs out of steam, I ask quietly if we can talk about our marriage. Blake barely glances at me. He says now isn't the time. He needs support, not more problems to deal with. I tell him I've been thinking about his comments about my body and the birth. I'd like to understand his perspective better. Blake waves his hand dismissively. He says we've been over this already. His honesty should be appreciated, not analyzed to death. I should be grateful he's being transparent instead of lying. Most men would have just left by now. He's still here, still trying to make this work despite everything. I nod slowly. Then I tell him I contacted Jenny 2 weeks ago. Blake's head snaps up. Finally, he's paying attention to me. I explain that I told her everything he said about being disgusted by my body after watching the birth. I told her about the affair with Megan. I told her about his supposed biological repulsion to me. Blake's face goes completely white. His mouth opens, but nothing comes out. I keep talking in the same calm voice. Jenny didn't ambush him randomly. I set it up. I researched his boss's family after learning about the cesarean presentation. I knew Jenny had her own traumatic birth experience. I called her and told her the truth about what her company's rising star really thinks about childbirth. Blake's color comes back all at once, flooding his face red. He starts screaming. I destroyed his career over my insecurity about my postpartum body. I'm vindictive and crazy. I ruined everything because I couldn't handle his honesty. I stay calm and point out that I simply told the truth to someone who asked a reasonable question about his stated beliefs. He gave that whole speech about respecting the birth process and the female body. Jenny just wanted to know if he had personal experience to back up those beautiful words. Blake lunges toward me. His hands are reaching out and his face is twisted with rage. Then our daughter starts crying from her bassinet across the room. The sound cuts through everything. Blake stops mid-motion, his hands still extended toward me. He looks at the screaming baby, then at his own hands, then at me. Something shifts in his eyes. He sees what he looks like right now, almost getting physical with his wife while their infant daughter screams in the background. His hands drop to his sides. He backs away slowly, staring at me like I'm someone he's never seen before. Then he turns and walks out of the house without another word. The door closes behind him. I pick up our daughter and hold her against my chest until she stops crying. Blake doesn't come back that night, or the next night. I get a single text on Saturday morning saying he needs space to process what I did to his career. I don't respond. I spend those 3 days taking care of our daughter, documenting everything I can find about his affair with Megan, and researching divorce attorneys in our area. I screenshot every cruel text he sent me about my body. I save every message where he talks about being at Megan's place while I was home alone with the baby. I print out his credit card statements showing hotel charges and restaurant bills during times he told me he was working late. The evidence folder on my laptop grows to 43 pages. On Monday morning, I call Dawn Hassan's office. Her assistant gets me an appointment for that afternoon because they had a cancellation. I bring the baby with me, along with my printed evidence folder and a timeline I created showing Blake's absence from parenting duties. Dawn's office is in a professional building downtown, all glass windows and modern furniture. She's in her late 40s with short gray hair and sharp eyes that miss nothing. She takes one look at my 4-month-old daughter sleeping in her carrier and offers me coffee before we start. I walk Dawn through everything. The affair starting 3 weeks postpartum. Blake's comments about my body disgusting him moving me to the guest room, his gifts of gym memberships and diet pills, the way he brought Megan around our friends while claiming to be traumatized by watching childbirth. Dawn takes notes on her laptop, her expression getting harder with each new detail. When I show her the texts between Blake and Megan where they discuss how gross my postpartum body is, Dawn actually swears under her breath. She asks if I have more documentation, and I hand her the 43-page folder. She flips through it slowly, stopping on certain pages to read more carefully. Dawn looks up from the folder and tells me I have an incredibly strong case. Blake admitted to the affair in writing. He abandoned his parenting duties completely, which I documented with the timeline showing he hasn't done a single night feeding or diaper change in 4 months. The emotional abuse is clear from his texts and the witness statements I got from 2 friends who heard him talk about being disgusted by my body. She says we have significant leverage for custody, child support, and asset division. Then she tells me I should file immediately, while Blake is still off balance from losing his promotion, and before he has time to hide assets or create a counter-narrative. I ask how quickly we can move, and she says she can have papers ready by end of business today if I want to proceed. I sign the retainer agreement right there in her office. Dawn makes calls to get the divorce petition prepared while I'm still sitting across from her desk. She asks detailed questions about our finances, our home, Blake's income from his sales job. I answer everything from memory because I've been managing our household finances since the baby was born. Blake just deposits his paycheck and assumes I handle the rest. Dawn's assistant brings in papers for me to review and sign. The petition lists adultery, abandonment, and cruel treatment as grounds. It requests primary physical custody, with Blake getting supervised visitation until he demonstrates actual parenting ability. It asks for child support calculated on his full salary. It demands a favorable asset split due to his fault in the marriage breakdown. I file for divorce on Monday afternoon. The clerk stamps the papers and gives me a case number. Dawn says the process server will deliver Blake's copies on Tuesday morning. She recommends I prepare for him to react badly when he gets served. I go home and move all of Blake's important documents to my lawyer's office for safekeeping. I change the locks on the house because technically it's my separate property from before the marriage. I set up the guest room as my permanent bedroom and move all of Blake's clothes into garbage bags in the garage. Then I wait. Tuesday morning at 9:30, my phone starts ringing. Blake calls me 3 times in a row. I don't answer. He leaves a voicemail that's just him yelling about how I'm a vindictive witch who's trying to ruin his life. He calls again 10 minutes later. This voicemail is him saying I'm overreacting to his honesty, and the calls keep coming. By 11 o'clock, he's called me 15 times. The voicemails get progressively more unhinged. He says I'm destroying both their lives over his honesty and my sensitivity about my body. He claims Megan is crying because I'm trying to punish her for supporting him through his trauma. He threatens to fight me for full custody because I'm clearly unstable. He says his parents will testify that I'm an unfit mother. The last voicemail is just him breathing heavily into the phone before hanging up. Dawn calls me Tuesday afternoon to say Blake's lawyer contacted her office. She's sending them a letter that outlines all our evidence. The text between Blake and Megan discussing his disgust with my postpartum body. The credit card statements proving the affair. The timeline showing his complete absence from parenting. The witness statements from friends who heard his cruel comments. We're asking for primary custody based on his abandonment. We're asking for child support based on his income. We're asking for a favorable asset division because he committed adultery and emotional abuse. Dawn says Blake's lawyer sounded surprised by how much evidence we have. She thinks they expected me to file on generic irreconcilable differences without proof of fault. Blake's mother calls me on Wednesday. She starts the conversation by saying boys will be boys, and all men struggle with fidelity sometimes. I should be more understanding of Blake's needs, and less focused on punishing him. She says I'm being too harsh by filing for divorce instead of trying to work things out. Blake made a mistake, but he's still a good father and provider. His father gets on the line and suggests marriage counseling. He knows a good Christian counselor who helps couples get past infidelity. They can have Blake back home by the weekend if I just drop the divorce and agree to work on the marriage. I take a breath and tell them their son cheated on me 3 weeks after I gave birth to his child. While I was bleeding and trying to keep their granddaughter alive on no sleep, Blake was at his girlfriend's apartment talking about how disgusting my body looked. He told me watching childbirth ruined his attraction to me, and he couldn't stand to sleep in the same room with me. He hasn't changed a single diaper or done a single night feeding in 4 months. He gave me diet pills for our anniversary and a book about winning your husband back for my birthday. He brought his girlfriend around our friends while claiming he was traumatized by witnessing medical procedures, even though he watches surgeries for his job without any problem. The phone line goes completely silent. Then Blake's father says they'll call back later and hangs up. They don't call back. Jenny texts me Thursday with an update from Blake's workplace. The gossip is spreading fast about why his wife filed for divorce right after he lost that big promotion. People are asking questions and connecting dots. Someone heard about the awkward Q&A moment with Jenny's question about his personal experience with childbirth. Someone else heard Blake's been staying at Megan's apartment since his wife kicked him out. The sales team is putting together that Blake cheated on his postpartum wife, got called out publicly for his hypocrisy about respecting birth, lost his promotion, and now his wife is divorcing him. Jenny says Blake's professional reputation is tanking because the Whisper Network is doing exactly what Whisper Networks do. They're sharing information and drawing conclusions Blake definitely doesn't want them drawing. Jenny calls me Friday afternoon sounding almost gleeful. She ran into Megan in the building cafeteria and Megan looked miserable. Jenny didn't say anything to her directly, but she overheard Megan talking to another coworker. Apparently Megan thought she was getting a successful medical sales executive with a bright future and a big promotion coming. Instead, she got a guy who lost his promotion, is going through a messy divorce, and has significant child support obligations about to hit. Blake's been staying at her apartment for almost a week, and Megan is realizing what she actually signed up for. Jenny says Megan has been noticeably cold to Blake at work lately. She's not doing the supportive girlfriend routine anymore. She barely looks at him in meetings. The other coworker asked Megan if everything was okay with her, and Blake and Megan just said it's complicated and changed the subject. Saturday morning, Blake shows up at my house with flowers and apologies. I watch him through the window as he walks up to the front door. He's holding a big bouquet of roses and he looks tired. I consider not answering, but I want to hear what he has to say. I open the door but don't let him inside. Blake starts talking immediately about how stressed he's been and how he said things he didn't mean. The presentation failure messed with his head, and he took it out on me unfairly. He wants to work on our marriage and be a real father to our daughter. He misses his family, and he knows he made mistakes, but he's ready to fix everything now. He holds out the flowers like they're some kind of peace offering that erases 4 months of cruelty and abandonment. I take the flowers and set them on the entry table without looking at them. Then I tell Blake he can come in and see the baby. He follows me into the living room where our daughter is on her playmat. Blake sits on the floor next to her and picks her up carefully. She doesn't cry, which surprises me. He holds her against his chest and talks to her softly. I pull out my phone and start recording video. Blake doesn't notice because he's focused on the baby. I let him hold her for a few minutes, capturing him actually interacting with his daughter for the first time in weeks. Then I ask him directly if he's still attracted to me, or if watching the birth permanently changed that like he said before. Blake looks up at me and his mouth opens, but nothing comes out right away. He's clearly trying to figure out what answer I want to hear. The pause stretches too long. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. 15 seconds. His eyes shift away from mine and he looks back down at the baby in his arms. That hesitation tells me everything I need to know. He's still disgusted by what he saw. He's still not attracted to me. He's just here because losing his promotion and facing divorce made him realize how bad his situation got. This isn't about wanting me back. This is about damage control. Blake finally speaks and admits he's trying to do the right thing even though the attraction issue is real for him. He says he researched it more after I exposed him at the presentation, and he thinks therapy might help him get past his mental block. There are specialists who work with men who develop aversions after witnessing birth. He's willing to try if it means saving our marriage and being there for our daughter. He looks at me with what he probably thinks is sincerity, but really just looks like desperation. I thank him for his honesty, and tell him the divorce is proceeding exactly as planned. But I'll agree to reasonable custody arrangements if he commits to actual parenting. not just showing up when it's convenient for his image. Blake's face falls and he starts to argue, but I take the baby from his arms and tell him he can leave now. He walks to the door without arguing further. I hear his car start and pull away. The video I recorded stays on my phone, showing Blake holding his daughter for the first time in weeks, while hesitating when asked if he could ever be attracted to me again. Dawn calls 2 days later to schedule our next meeting. Blake's lawyer sent over his custody proposal. They want 50-50 custody starting immediately. Dawn sounds annoyed when she tells me this. She says Blake's lawyer is clearly trying to intimidate me into accepting less child support by threatening a custody battle. We schedule a meeting for Thursday afternoon. I bring all my documentation to Dawn's office. Every text message from Blake about going to Megan's apartment. Every missed pediatrician appointment. Every night feeding I handled alone while he was somewhere else. Dawn spreads the papers across her desk and makes notes. She says this is exactly what we need. Blake spent 4 months being essentially absent from our daughter's life. He can't suddenly claim he deserves equal custody when he barely acted like a father until his career fell apart. Dawn explains that judges look at patterns of behavior, not sudden changes when divorce papers get filed. Blake choosing Megan over his newborn daughter for months creates a clear pattern. The documentation I kept proves he wasn't just physically absent, but emotionally checked out. Dawn says we'll counter with supervised visitation initially, with the possibility of overnight visits once Blake proves he can actually parent consistently. The meeting with Blake's lawyer happens the following week. We sit in a conference room at Dawn's office. Blake looks tired and angry. His lawyer is a middle-aged man named Richard who tries to start with friendly small talk. Dawn shuts that down immediately and presents our counter-proposal. Supervised visitation twice a week for 2 hours each visit. No overnights until Blake completes parenting classes and demonstrates 3 months of consistent, appropriate interaction with our daughter. Blake explodes. He says I'm being vindictive and using our daughter as a weapon. Richard puts a hand on Blake's arm and tells him to calm down. Dawn slides the documentation across the table. Text messages where Blake tells Megan he can't stand being around the baby because she reminds him of my disgusting body. Receipts from restaurants showing Blake was out with Megan during times he claimed he was working late. A log I kept of every diaper change, feeding, and doctor appointment that shows I handled 98% of our daughter's care. Richard reads through the papers and his expression changes. He asks Blake if these messages are real. Blake says I'm taking things out of context and he was just venting about normal new parent stress. Dawn points out that normal new parent stress doesn't involve telling your affair partner that your wife's postpartum body makes you physically sick. Richard looks at Blake for a long moment and then suggests they take a break to confer privately. They leave the room. Dawn and I sit quietly. She checks her phone and answers a few emails. 20 minutes later, Richard comes back without Blake. He says his client is willing to accept supervised visitation as a starting point. He wants it noted that Blake is agreeing to this arrangement voluntarily, not because he admits any wrongdoing. Dawn says that's fine. We'll draft the paperwork. Blake returns for the final discussion looking defeated. Richard explains that supervised visitation is actually in Blake's best interest given the evidence. A judge would likely order the same thing or possibly less. This way Blake can start rebuilding a relationship with his daughter while demonstrating he's serious about being a parent. Blake signs the agreement but won't look at me. He leaves immediately after. The child support calculations arrive 3 weeks later. Dawn forwards me the email with a note saying Blake is going to lose his mind when he sees these numbers. I open the attachment. The monthly amount is more than I expected. Dawn explains that Blake's base salary as a medical sales rep, even without the promotion he lost, puts him in a higher income bracket. Combined with my current lack of employment while caring for an infant, the formula requires substantial support. Blake calls Dawn's office within an hour of receiving his copy. Dawn puts him on speaker so I can hear. He's yelling about how the amount is completely unfair and unreasonable. He says I sabotaged his career advancement and now I'm trying to financially destroy him. Dawn waits for him to finish and then calmly explains that the calculations are based on state guidelines using his actual reported income. If he believes the amount is incorrect, he's welcome to provide documentation of changed financial circumstances. Blake argues that his career prospects are damaged because of what I did. He should have gotten that promotion and the significant raise that came with it. Now he's stuck in his current position with no advancement opportunities because everyone at his company knows about his personal problems. Dawn's voice gets sharp. She tells Blake that he damaged his own career by cheating on his postpartum wife, and then being unable to handle a simple question about his experience with childbirth during a professional presentation. No judge will reduce child support because Blake faced professional consequences for his personal choices. Richard gets on the line and tells Blake to stop talking. He says they'll review the calculations and respond formally through proper channels. Dawn says that's fine, but the numbers are correct according to state guidelines. She ends the call. I sit there feeling oddly satisfied. Blake wanted to punish me for exposing his hypocrisy. Now he's learning that actions have financial consequences too. 6 weeks after the presentation, Jenny texts me. She heard through work channels that Megan broke up with Blake. Apparently Megan realized Blake wasn't the successful catch she thought he was getting involved with. Jenny says the gossip around the office is that Megan has no interest in playing stepmom to an infant, while Blake pays significant child support every month. Blake is back to living alone in the apartment he rented after I filed for divorce. I feel a strange mix of satisfaction and emptiness when I read Jenny's message. Megan enabled Blake's cruelty toward me. She sat in my house and talked about his trauma while knowing he was cheating. Part of me is glad she's learning what kind of person Blake really is. But another part of me realizes that Blake losing Megan doesn't give me back the 4 months of my daughter's life that he missed. It doesn't erase the cruel things he said about my body. It just means he's alone now, dealing with consequences. Blake shows up for his first supervised visitation on a Saturday morning. The supervisor is a woman named Linda who works for the Family Services Agency. She's in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. Blake arrives looking exhausted and defeated. He's lost weight and his clothes don't fit right. Linda explains the rules. Blake can hold the baby, feed her, play with her. Linda will observe and take notes. If Blake needs help with any care tasks, Linda will provide instruction. I hand our daughter to Blake. He takes her carefully, like she might break. She doesn't cry, which surprises both of us. Blake sits on the couch with her in his arms and just looks at her face. He tells her he's sorry for missing so much time. Linda watches quietly. I leave them there and go wait in my car. 2 hours later, Linda calls to say the visit is over. I come back inside. Linda pulls me aside while Blake is putting his jacket on. She says he was awkward at first, but he did try. He needed instruction on how to support the baby's head properly and how to burp her after the bottle. But he listened to the instructions and followed them. Linda says Blake asked good questions about the baby's routine and seemed genuinely interested in learning. She'll include in her report that Blake needs more education on basic infant care, but appears willing to put in the effort. Blake leaves without talking to me. Linda schedules the next visit for Wednesday evening. I take my daughter home and feed her lunch. She babbles happily, unaware that her father is finally trying to be present in her life. I start therapy with Savannah the following week. Her office is in a small building near downtown. She's younger than I expected, maybe late 30s, with dark hair and an easy smile. I sit on her couch and don't know where to start. Savannah asks me what brought me to therapy. I tell her everything. Blake's affair, his cruel comments about my body, the revenge I planned, the satisfaction of watching him fail publicly, the divorce and custody battle. Savannah listens without interrupting. When I finish, she's quiet for a moment. Then she tells me that my anger was completely justified. Blake betrayed me during one of the most difficult times in my life. He was cruel when I needed support. Anyone would be angry. But she also says I need to work through the betrayal and rebuild my sense of self beyond being Blake's wronged wife. The revenge felt good in the moment, but it can't be my whole identity going forward. I ask her what she means. Savannah explains that I've spent months focused on Blake, planning his downfall, documenting his failures as a father, fighting for custody and child support. All of that was necessary, but now I need to figure out who I am as a single mother and as an individual person. What do I want for myself beyond making sure Blake faces consequences? What kind of life do I want to build for me and my daughter? I don't have good answers. Savannah says that's okay. That's what therapy is for. We'll work on it together. She gives me some exercises to do at home. Writing about what I enjoyed before I met Blake. Thinking about what makes me feel strong and capable beyond the revenge I executed. We schedule another appointment for next week. Jenny and I start meeting for coffee regularly. She shares her own story over lattes at a cafe near her house. Her birth experience was traumatic too. Emergency cesarean after 30 hours of labor. Complications that left her in the hospital for a week. But her husband stayed with her the whole time. He learned to change diapers and give bottles. He told her she was beautiful even when she was exhausted and in pain. Jenny tears up a little when she talks about it. She says having a friend who understands both the betrayal and the medical sales world helps her process what happened to me. I tell Jenny about Blake's supervised visits and how he's actually trying now. She says people sometimes grow up when they face real consequences. Maybe Blake is finally understanding what he lost. Or maybe he's just trying to look good for the custody evaluation. Either way, our daughter deserves a father who shows up. Jenny agrees. She says her kids are teenagers now and she still remembers how hard those early months were. Having support makes all the difference. We talk about other things too. Jenny's book club. My plans to maybe go back to the school. The upcoming holidays and how to navigate them as newly single parents. By the time we finish our coffee, I feel less alone than I have in months. Jenny hugs me before we leave and tells me to text her anytime. Blake's supervised visits continue twice a week. Linda reports that he's improving steadily. He's learning to change diapers without making a mess. He can prepare bottles at the right temperature. He's getting better at soothing our daughter when she cries. Linda says Blake enrolled in parenting classes at the community center and he's taking them seriously. He brings questions from the classes to the visits and practices the techniques Linda teaches him. I watch this progress with mixed feelings. Part of me is glad Blake is finally stepping up as a father. Our daughter needs him to be present and capable. But another part of me is still angry that it took losing everything for him to care. He missed 4 months of her life because he was too disgusted by my body to be around his own child. Now that Megan is gone and his career is damaged, suddenly he wants to be dad of the year. I don't like admitting this, but Savannah is right. I've been so focused on making Blake pay that I haven't thought about what comes after. The satisfaction of watching him squirm doesn't fill the empty spaces in my life. I need to figure out who I am now, separate from being the wronged wife who executed the perfect revenge. Dawn calls me 2 weeks later with news about the settlement negotiations. Blake's lawyer finally came back with a counteroffer. They're willing to agree to a 60-40 asset split in my favor if I drop the request for full custody. Blake wants a clear path to overnight visits once he completes the parenting classes and demonstrates basic competency. Dawn says it's actually a reasonable offer given the evidence we have. Blake is acknowledging his affair and his abandonment. He's admitting he messed up instead of trying to paint himself as the victim. We go back and forth on the custody schedule. Dawn negotiates for supervised visits to continue until Blake completes 3 months of successful parenting without major incidents. Then he can start with 1 overnight per week. If that goes well for another 3 months, we'll revisit increasing his time. Blake agrees to everything through his lawyer. No pushback, no arguments. Dawn says he must really want to avoid a trial where all his disgusting comments about my body would become public record. I sign the paperwork feeling relieved but also strangely empty. This should feel like a victory. Instead, it just feels like the end of something that died months ago. Jenny texts me a week after the divorce finalizes. She heard through the office network that Blake's boss transferred him to a different territory. He'll be covering the northern region instead of the metro area where he built his reputation. Jenny says the official reason is staffing needs, but everyone knows the real story. Blake's reputation in his current territory is damaged beyond repair. Too many people witnessed the presentation disaster. Too many heard the whispers about why his wife filed for divorce right after. His boss is giving him a chance to start fresh somewhere new, away from Megan and away from the clients who watched him freeze up during that Q&A. Jenny also mentions that Megan put in for a transfer to a different department. She doesn't want to work on the same team as Blake anymore. I feel a small spark of satisfaction at that news. I start applying for remote jobs that fit around the baby's nap schedule. Most require experience I don't have or hours I can't commit to. But I keep searching because I need something that's mine. The child support covers our basic needs, but I want financial independence beyond Blake's money. I want to rebuild my professional identity instead of just being a stay-at-home mom who got cheated on. 3 weeks into my search, I land a part-time position doing data entry for a medical billing company. It's boring work, but it's flexible. I can log in during naps and after bedtime. The pay isn't much, maybe enough to cover groceries and gas, but it gives me something to focus on besides Blake's supervised visits and custody schedules. I'm building something for myself again. Blake's lawyer forwards me a letter 2 months after the divorce finalizes. Blake wrote it himself, not through legal language. He apologizes for his cruelty. He admits he was wrong to blame me for his attraction issues. He says his therapist helped him understand that he was looking for excuses to justify the affair instead of dealing with his own problems. The letter goes on for 2 pages. Blake talks about how ashamed he is of the things he said about my body, how he realizes now that watching the birth wasn't the real issue. He was scared of being a father and used his disgust as a shield. He knows I probably won't forgive him and he doesn't expect me to. But he wants me to know he's working on himself so he can be a better father to our daughter. I read the letter 3 times. Part of me wants to believe he's genuinely changing. Another part remembers him describing my body as disgusting while texting Megan in front of me. I fold the letter and put it in a drawer. I don't respond. The supervised visit supervisor sends her final report to both lawyers. She recommends moving Blake to unsupervised visitation. He completed all the parenting classes. He can change diapers, prepare bottles, and soothe the baby when she cries. He shows up on time and stays engaged during the full 2 hours. He asks appropriate questions about her development and follows the supervisor's guidance. Dawn forwards me the report and asks what I want to do. I stare at my daughter playing with her blocks on the living room floor. She deserves a relationship with her father. Blake is trying now, even if it took losing everything to make him care. I tell Dawn to approve the move to unsupervised visits. Our daughter needs her dad, even if Blake and I will never be okay. Jenny invites me to her book club meeting on a Thursday night. I almost say no because leaving the baby with a sitter still makes me nervous. But Jenny insists, saying I need adult conversation that isn't about custody schedules or divorce settlements. The book club meets at a cafe near Jenny's house. 6 women ranging from their 30s to their 50s sit around a table with wine and appetizers. They're supposed to be discussing some mystery novel, but within 10 minutes they're asking me about Blake. Jenny already told them the basic story. They want details about the presentation and the divorce. I find myself laughing while I describe Blake's face when Jenny asks that question in front of 200 people. The women cheer and raise their glasses. 3 of them are divorced. 2 never married. 1 is happily married to her second husband after leaving a guy who sounds remarkably like Blake. They celebrate my strategic takedown while also telling me it's time to focus on moving forward. They invite me to join the club permanently. I say yes. Blake picks up our daughter for his first overnight visit on a Saturday morning. I packed her diaper bag 3 times, checking and rechecking that he has everything. Formula, diapers, wipes, her favorite stuffed animal, the sleep sack she needs for bedtime. Blake takes the bag and promises to text me updates. I watch him buckle her into the car seat and drive away. The house feels too quiet. I walk through the rooms not sure what to do with myself. Then I remember I have a whole night and morning to myself. No feedings, no diaper changes, no baby monitor. I sign up for a painting class at the community center that starts next week. I find a postpartum fitness group that meets Tuesday mornings. I take a long shower without rushing. I order takeout and watch a movie that isn't a kid's show. By the time Blake brings her back Sunday afternoon, I feel more like myself than I have in months. Not just a wronged wife or an exhausted mother. Just me. Savannah and I work through my feelings about my postpartum body over several therapy sessions. She has me stand in front of a mirror and describe what I see without using Blake's words. At first, all I can think about is his disgust. The stretching, the fluids, the smell. But Savannah pushes me to find my own words. I see a body that carried and delivered a healthy baby. I see strength in the softness. I see proof that I survived something difficult. Savannah helps me understand that Blake's reaction was about his own issues, not any actual problem with my body. He couldn't handle the reality of childbirth because he's shallow and selfish. My body accomplished something incredible. I'm healing, growing stronger, learning to appreciate what I did instead of seeing myself through Blake's cruel lens. 6 months after the presentation, I run into Megan at a coffee shop downtown. She's in line ahead of me and clearly wants to avoid eye contact. But I'm done letting people like her make me feel small. I tap her shoulder and say hello. Megan turns around looking uncomfortable. She mumbles something about hoping I'm doing well. I tell her I'm doing great, actually. The divorce is final, I have primary custody, and I'm rebuilding my life. Then I add that she's welcome to Blake if she wants him, but I'm doing fine without either of them. Megan's face goes red. She admits she was wrong to participate in Blake's cruelty. She says she's ashamed of how she behaved during the affair. She thought she was special, that Blake genuinely cared about her. But he started making similar comments about her body a few months ago. Little remarks about her weight or her skin or how she looked in certain clothes. She realizes now that Blake's problem is Blake, not the women in his life. He'll always find something wrong because the issue is inside him. I don't forgive her, but I do feel satisfied knowing she learned the truth about Blake firsthand. I wish her luck and leave with my coffee. Walking back to my car, I feel lighter than I have in months. Blake picks up our daughter Saturday morning. I've triple-checked the diaper bag and packed extra clothes because I'm still nervous about leaving her overnight. He buckles her into the car seat while I watch from the porch. She waves at me with her tiny hand, and I feel my chest tighten. Blake asks if she's been sleeping through the night yet. I tell him she wakes up once around 3 but goes back down pretty fast. He nods and mentions he bought the same brand of formula I use so the transition will be easier. I give him the list of foods she's been trying lately. Mashed sweet potatoes, applesauce, those little puffs that dissolve. He takes the paper and promises to text me updates throughout the day. The conversation feels strange because it's normal. We're talking about sleep schedules and feeding times instead of screaming at each other. It's not friendly, but it's working. He drives away, and the house goes quiet in a way that feels both lonely and peaceful. I walk through the rooms not knowing what to do with myself at first. Then I remember I have a whole night to myself. I sign up for that painting class at the community center I've been eyeing. I find a postpartum fitness group that meets Tuesday mornings. I take a shower that lasts 30 minutes without rushing to check on the baby. I order Chinese food and watch a movie that isn't a cartoon. When Blake brings her back Sunday afternoon, I feel more like myself than I have since she was born. Not just a mom or a betrayed wife, just me. Dawn calls me on a Wednesday afternoon while I'm folding laundry. She says the final paperwork is ready for signatures. I drive to her office the next morning with the baby in her carrier. Dawn walks me through each page explaining what everything means. The divorce is officially complete. I'm legally single. The settlement gives me 60% of our shared assets plus child support that will cover daycare and basic expenses. I have primary custody with Blake getting scheduled visits that increase as he proves himself as a parent. Dawn shakes my hand and tells me I handled this better than most people in my situation. I sit in my car for 10 minutes after leaving her office just breathing. The relief hits me so hard I start crying. Not sad tears, but the kind that come when something heavy finally lifts off your chest. I text Jenny that it's done. She responds immediately with champagne emojis and tells me we're celebrating this weekend. Jenny hosts at her house Saturday night. The book club women all show up with wine and fancy cheeses. They toast to my strategic brilliance and my resilience. Someone mentions how I played Blake like a chess game and everyone laughs. Another woman says I should write a revenge manual for betrayed wives. Jenny raises her glass and says, "Here's to building a better life without dead weight." We drink and eat, and I feel genuinely happy surrounded by these women who supported me through the worst months of my life. They ask about my plans now that the divorce is final. I tell them about the painting class and the fitness group, about finishing my degree online, about maybe dating eventually when I'm ready. They all nod and share their own stories of rebuilding after divorce or betrayal. By the end of the night, I realize I have real friends now. People who know the whole ugly story and still want me around. Blake's mother calls me on a Tuesday morning. Her voice sounds different from the last time we spoke. Smaller somehow. She apologizes for dismissing my pain when I first told them about the affair. She admits she was wrong to defend Blake's behavior and make excuses for him. She asks if she can have a relationship with her granddaughter. I tell her yes, but with clear boundaries. Visits will be at my house where I can supervise. She agrees immediately. She comes over that Saturday with toys and books. She holds the baby and cries a little. She tells me I'm a good mother and she's sorry she didn't say that before. Blake's father doesn't come, but she says he's working through his own shame about how they handled things. I don't forgive them completely, but I appreciate the effort. My daughter deserves to know her grandparents even if they made mistakes. Jenny invites me to lunch at this cafe downtown. Tyler comes too, which surprises me. We order sandwiches and talk about normal things at first. Then Tyler mentions that Blake's new territory isn't going well. Sales numbers are down, and there are rumors about performance reviews coming up. Jenny gives me a look across the table. Tyler keeps talking about how the company is restructuring, and Blake might not survive the next round of cuts. I sip my iced tea and don't comment. Blake's career problems are his own now. I don't need to celebrate his failures or worry about his success. Jenny changes the subject to their lake house and asks if I want to come visit sometime. I say yes because I'm done letting Blake's life affect mine. Savannah asks me during our Thursday session if I've thought about dating. I laugh and tell her I can barely remember what it feels like to be attractive to someone. She reminds me that Blake's disgust was about his own issues, not my actual body. I know she's right, but knowing something and feeling it are different. I download a dating app that weekend just to see what happens. I swipe through profiles while the baby naps. I match with a few guys and have some basic conversations. Nothing serious, but it reminds me I'm still a person outside of being a mom. I go on one coffee date with a teacher named Lucas. He's nice and makes me laugh. We talk about books and our jobs. He doesn't ask about my divorce or my baby until the end when I bring it up. He says he respects single moms and thinks it's brave. I don't see him again because the timing isn't right, but it feels good to know I can do this when I'm ready. Savannah helps me work through my nervousness about physical intimacy, about trusting someone new with my body after Blake made me feel disgusting. We talk about reclaiming my sexuality on my own terms instead of letting Blake's words define me. Blake calls me on a Sunday afternoon sounding excited. Our daughter took her first steps during his visit. He describes how she pulled herself up on the coffee table and took 3 wobbly steps toward him, before sitting down hard. He sounds genuinely happy telling me about it. Not resentful or obligated, but actually proud. I thank him for calling and tell him to take videos next time. After we hang up, I realize this is the first time he sounded like a real father instead of someone checking boxes on a custody agreement. Maybe he's actually growing up. Maybe becoming a part-time parent forced him to appreciate the moments instead of taking them for granted. I don't forgive him for what he did, but I can hope he becomes better for our daughter's sake. I enroll in online classes to finish my degree. I had paused everything when I got pregnant because Blake said we didn't need 2 incomes. Now I'm taking business courses at night after the baby goes to sleep. Between work and school and parenting, I'm busy all the time. But it's the good kind of busy where I'm building something instead of just surviving. I'm creating a life that's mine. Not defined by Blake's betrayal or my revenge or even being a mother. Just me working toward goals I set for myself. I study while drinking coffee at midnight. I submit assignments during nap times. I feel my brain waking up after months of baby fog and exhaustion. I'm remembering who I was before all of this and figuring out who I want to become. Jenny calls me on a Friday and invites me and the baby to their lake house for the weekend. She says her kids are excited to meet us and Tyler is grilling on Saturday. I pack bags for both of us and drive 2 hours north. The house sits right on the water with a dock and a small beach. Jenny's kids are 7 and 9 and they're gentle with my daughter. They show her rocks and leaves and let her grab their fingers. Tyler grills burgers and we eat on the deck watching the sunset. Jenny and I talk while the kids play in the shallow water. I feel genuinely happy for the first time since before I got pregnant. Not just okay or managing, but actually happy. I have real friends who care about me. I have a solid support system. I have a clear path forward that I'm building myself. My daughter splashes in the water and laughs. I take a picture to remember this moment. This feeling of moving past the worst thing that ever happened to me and finding something good on the other side. Blake calls me on a Tuesday evening while I'm making dinner. He sounds nervous. He asks if I have a minute to talk about the custody schedule. I put him on speaker and keep chopping vegetables while our daughter plays with blocks on the kitchen floor. He says he's been thinking about adding Wednesday overnights to the current arrangement. He's been doing well with the weekend visits, and he thinks our daughter would benefit from more time with him. He talks about how she lights up when he picks her up, and how she started calling him Dada consistently now. I watch her stack blocks and knock them down, laughing at the crash. I tell him I'll think about it and call him back tomorrow. After we hang up, I sit on the floor next to her and think about what's best for her versus what feels fair to me. Blake hurt me badly, but she deserves a father who shows up. The next day, I call him back and agree to the Wednesday night starting next week. He sounds genuinely happy and thanks me. I tell him this is about her, not about forgiving him. He says he understands. I spend weeks planning my daughter's first birthday party. I invite Jenny and all the book club women. My mom and sister drive in from 3 hours away. I order a cake shaped like a butterfly and fill the living room with pink and purple balloons. Blake is supposed to pick her up at 10 in the morning for his visit. He shows up exactly on time carrying a wrapped present. He looks at all the decorations and the table set up with food. He asks what time the party starts. I tell him 2 o'clock, but he's not invited to stay. This party is for the people who supported me through the worst year of my life. He opens his mouth like he's going to argue, but then closes it. He picks up our daughter and kisses her head. He tells her happy birthday and carries her out to his car with her diaper bag. I watch them drive away, and then finish setting up. Jenny arrives first with a huge stuffed bear. The other women come with gifts and hugs. My mom cries when she sees how good I look compared to last year. We eat cake and watch my daughter smash frosting all over her face. Everyone takes pictures. I blow out the candle for her and make a wish that she grows up strong and loved. When Blake drops her off that evening, she's wearing a new outfit he bought her. He hands her to me without coming inside. I thank him for respecting my boundary. He nods and leaves. Savannah smiles at me during our Thursday session. She says she's been reviewing my progress over the past year. She lists everything I've accomplished. I processed Blake's betrayal without letting it destroy me. I planned and executed revenge that held him accountable. I navigated a difficult divorce and came out with a fair settlement. I established healthy co-parenting boundaries that put my daughter first. I rebuilt my life as a strong single mother with a support system and clear goals. She says she's proud of me. I feel tears in my eyes, but they're good tears this time. I tell her I'm proud of myself too. A year ago, I was drowning in betrayal and exhaustion. Now I'm taking college classes and making new friends and actually enjoying time with my daughter instead of just surviving. Savannah asks how I feel about Blake now. I think about it carefully. I tell her I don't forgive him and probably never will. What he did was cruel, and the timing made it worse. But I don't hate him anymore either. He's just my daughter's father now. Someone I have to deal with professionally for the next 17 years. She nods and says that's healthy. Anger was useful when I needed it for fuel. Now I'm past needing it. I sit on the living room floor watching my daughter play with her toys. She's gotten so big in just 1 year. She pulls herself up on the coffee table and takes wobbly steps along the edge. She babbles constantly in sounds that almost make sense. She has Blake's dark hair but my smile. I think about everything that happened this year. Blake's cruelty could have destroyed me. Finding out about the affair 3 weeks postpartum while I was bleeding and exhausted. Hearing him describe his disgust with my body. Being moved to the guest room like I was contaminated. Meeting Megan and hearing her defend his trauma. All of it should have broken me. Instead, I used it as fuel. I planned carefully and exposed his hypocrisy in front of everyone who mattered to his career. I filed for divorce and fought for what I deserved. I built a new life with real friends and actual support. I went back to the school and started dating again. My body brought life into this world. It survived betrayal and late nights and healing. It carried me through to the other side. I'm not the same person I was when I gave birth in that delivery room. I'm stronger now. Smarter. More independent. Blake tried to make me feel disgusting and worthless. He failed. I look at my daughter and smile. She's going to grow up watching her mother be strong. That's worth more than any revenge.